Hi, and welcome to Chat with Dr. Kat. I am Dr. Kat. I am a psychologist, an author, and one of the founders of online telehealth. Today we're going to be talking about trust. But before we get to that, I want to remind you of my website, chatwithdrkat.com. And on that website, you can put in a question. You can attach it with your name and email address, or you can do it completely anonymously. Right now, I'm drawing a lot of these topics through those questions that do come in. So just remember, go onto the website, chatwithdrkat.com. Okay, as always, we are going to be discussing an issue with no fluff, no judgment, just real talk with real change. Okay, let's get down to trust. Here's the thing about trust. You can lose it in seconds, minutes, months, weeks, but the real thing is, it could be seconds. Sometimes you get into a relationship and you think, okay, I've got trust issues here, and that may be on you. That's your excess baggage that I always recommend that you take care of. But on the norm, when people get into a relationship, they've worked on themselves, they get in, and this is the trust building phase. You're learning about that person. You're learning if you can trust them. And oftentimes we start with a lot of trust until that trust is broken. Trust is a difficult thing because in most relationships, we think the relationship is about love. When we think about a romantic relationship, it's about love. Really, the core of any relationship is trust. Love is the icing on the cake. So when you think about trust, here are some areas that you've got to think about when you are maintaining trust in any relationship. One, that the person can trust that you're not going to emotionally harm them. That's a tough one because we're all normal and sometimes we say things that, we should take back. And oftentimes that great rule of thumb is don't say anything you can't take back. But we get mad sometimes. We have that emotion. That's where forgiveness comes in. But we'll talk about that in another episode. So that the person's not going to emotionally harm you. The second one is that they're not going to physically harm you. Another one is stability. That when you walk in through that door, that you're going to get the same person. Not that sometimes you can't be mad or emotional or whatever it is. It just means that you get that same person. It's not like you're getting that Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of thing. Okay, the other one is that you don't talk about the person behind their back. Again, another tough one because this really does fall a little bit more on women, but a lot of men, due to social media, guys' night out, whatever it is, you get together, everybody starts talking about their relationship. Hey, I go on a lot of girls' nights out, moms' nights out, whatever it is, and people talk about their relationship. The problem is it becomes a violation of trust. Then what's going to happen is you're going to come home, you've talked to your friends, and they've said, we're all talking about our relationships. Right there is a violation of trust. So what happens is maybe the next time you go out, your partner says to you, you know what? I don't think I want to go out with them. You guys always sit around talking about me. I'm embarrassed. I don't want to be around them. Or they go and they are around them and the relationship is strained. No one wants to think that someone is talking behind their back. That's why I always say, if you have one confidant, that's great. And that confidant is somebody who has your heart, has your soul, has the health of your relationship in mind, and is not always one-sided. Or you go see a therapist. That person can be your person. But just remember, when you look at all those areas of trust, you don't want to violate them. And one of the last biggies is cheating, an affair. That's a huge violation. So let's go into that a little bit. When you break down trust, sometimes it's very hard to come back from it. And the reason being is it's because you're dealing with a couple of different perceptions. So say somebody violates. I'm going to give you a big example here. Big example. Okay, so somebody goes out and they drink too much and they wind up kissing somebody at a bar, or they wind up kissing somebody at a party, or something happens. And it was seconds. They didn't know the person ahead of time. It happened in a matter of seconds, okay? Not good, not okay. However, you got to look at what brought them to that time. What brought them to the place of drinking so uncontrollably that you'd find yourself in that situation where you can no longer use impulse control? That's a biggie. We got to find out what's going on there. But when something like that happens to the other person, this could be massive. Now, when we bring it down to event versus perception, event is 2 people kissed. That's your event. 2 people rubbed body parts. That's your event. Perception is they've had an intimate moment. They violated our vows. They violated our trust. They did all sorts of things to that other person. What does that mean? Is the relationship over? Can you never trust again? And it's interesting how we classify different things, because say you rub 2 elbows together, body part. Why is that not cheating? If you rubbed your hands, you did a high five, why is that not cheating? Well, because we've now perceived different areas of the body, obviously, as taboo areas. They're private areas, or they're areas that bring on intimacy. But again, it's perception. Perception on what the world gives us. We see it on movies. We see it in books. We hear it from religious standpoints. We hear it from our parents. We hear it from our friends. And all of these things come into play. When you're able to strip things down and really see why the other person is doing what they're doing, that's when the real work starts to come into play. Usually what happens is they stay set on the violation and the perception around the violation. Now, that was a really simple example, okay? Now, violations of trust can be a lot of different things. Let's talk about another one that maybe has to do with a relationship, and you're in this relationship and all of a sudden you find out that there's something that they've done that's now put you in a financial crisis. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in. You're dealing with fear, anxiety, trust issues. Has the person been lying to me? It's all of these things all crumpled together while you're still trying to hold it together, maybe for the kids, maybe for your life, to figure out what's going on. So then you move forward. If you don't take care of that violation, that issue of trust, then moving forward, you can see this 2, 3 years, 4, 5, 10 years from now, you'll still see it playing out. The person will be the one that felt violated. The person will be short with their answers, snappy. Maybe their responses are much larger than what you think it should be. And it's because they're operating from a place with all of these issues. You could say, hey, I wanted to see about, booking a trip. I want to see about making this purchase. And the person comes back with a snapping response, and it's because they're still dealing with fear. They're still dealing with anxiety. They feel like they're still operating from that standpoint. Now, here's another angle. Post-traumatic stress syndrome, probably one of the most easiest disorders to treat if treated initially in the acute stress disorder phase. I know I'm getting a little technical here, but initially when a crisis happens, an event happens, something huge happens or minor, and we see it as a crisis, we have a stress reacting event that goes on in our body, in our brain. So that lasts for about 6 months or so. And if we don't work on those issues, then it kind of goes into post-traumatic stress disorder. That's why something happens and all of a sudden, boom, you're reacting far bigger than before. And it's because you're operating with the excess baggage. That's the difficult part. If you don't solve it work out these things, it's not going to work. Oftentimes, though, in relationships, there's either one or both that sweep it under the carpet and they think it's going to go away. They think it's going to go away once things are better. The problem is, the once things get better does help the situation, but if the person cannot trust that the things are actually better, doesn't matter. They're still operating from this desperate place. So I always like to give this visual because I think it's a good one. And really, when you're feeling like you're drowning, okay, and you're like this, okay, trying to breathe and grasp at what? And the person's trying to speak to you about decision making or something else. How is it possible that someone who's literally on their tippy toes, trying to breathe to survive, can have a great response? Have a response that's going to sound like it's educated and well thought out and put together. You've researched it. You've done. It's not possible because the person is acting from a stress response. Then the other person feels let down. Here we go, hamster wheel. He says something, she says something, blah, 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 all over again. Unless we learn how to communicate, unless we learn how to deal with the violation of trust, and unless we learn how to forgive, issues are going to arise. I always say, if you don't handle the business that occurred when you were in a different relationship and you were hurt and all of that in a different relationship, unfortunately what happens is you get into this new relationship and you bleed all over it, even though this relationship didn't give you the cut. It was the other one. Yet this person is dealing with it. Which now transfers into, once you get into that next relationship, your expectation sometimes is that this other person has to jump through hoops to prove that they are nothing like the past person that hurt you so much. Okay, I'm here to tell you. I know you may not like this. It's not their responsibility. Not at all. It's your responsibility. You need to figure out what was going on, what happened, what led you to that place, and more importantly, what allowed you to take that behavior from that other person. That's the real kind of nuts and bolts of it. Then from there, you can work on your new relationship. So there's a lot of things we talked about here. And really what it comes down to, the basics are, we got to know about trust. We need to learn how to not violate that trust. We need to decide what is the event versus what is the perception. Here's another thing about event versus perception. Here's a quote. I love this quote. A crisis is a mere reaction to an event. That's why with some people, a crisis is huge to one person and to another, it's not. I'm going to give you an example. Here's my example. True story. I'm driving in my car. I'm on the phone with a friend of mine, but we're working on some business and we're actively in the conversation. She knows I'm driving the car. Earlier, I got in the car. I did not pay attention. It was me, all my fault. I did not pay attention to the gas. I didn't look. I normally always look. Did not this day. Got in the car, ran some errands. I'm on the phone with her. I'm in the zone, paying attention to my driving, but I'm on the phone, which is another thing. I'm a little distracted, not watching my gas. Next thing I know, I feel that dreadful tug. I ran out of gas. So I put the car in neutral, kind of coast down, find a little shady spot, sit underneath the tree. I tell her, look, I got to get off the phone. I've got to call AAA. She's in an absolute panic. What are you going to do? Do you need me? What's going to happen? I said, just hold on. I will call you back. I called AAA. They told me it was going to be about an hour. Now, I started to kick in and think, all right, I have 1 hour, which to me is a gift. Sometimes we don't have that hour, or sometimes we can't even get to that hour, okay? But it became a choice. It became a choice for me. I was going to sit there. I rolled down the windows. I'm in a shady spot. I'm in nature, looking around, looking at the birds, taking some deep breaths, enjoying my 1 hour. I called her back and I said, look, I've got an hour. I'm going to just call you back after AAA's here. I have an hour to just take a deep breath. She's in, again, an ultimate panic. Why? Because running out of gas for her was a crisis reaction, probably stemming from a time that she had run out of gas. She's also a little bit more reactive, and that's where she was at. What I did was I took it as an opportunity to just relax, take that deep breath. Now, AAA was there in 35 minutes, but I had 35 minutes of honestly sheer bliss of just sitting there listening to nature. Now, not all events can be like this. Not all events can be handled like this. I just chose to let that one be it. Why? Because I chose my reaction to not be a crisis. Now, why am I saying choose, choice, all of that? Not every event you can have that. Somebody gets hurt, there's a huge crisis that happens and your brain goes into it because there's fear of loss, there's fear of struggle, there's fear of somebody's hurt, panic, all those things. We can't necessarily stop and say, well, I'm going to choose to look at this a different way. You can sometimes, but other times you can't. But what happens is we oftentimes get into a stress response habit. Not every situation has to be monumental. Not every event has to have that stress response. When they're little ones like running out of gas in an area where I'm safe and it's fine, it doesn't have to be that response. When you're in a relationship and something small that happens in your relationship, it doesn't have to be a huge response. All I'm saying is there's going to be times where you can step back, take a deep breath, and not respond so huge. And you have that choice. You have that choice to make it about you that day. Sometimes as parents and business people and everything that we do in life, sometimes making time for ourselves, just for a moment, needs to be a choice. You need to add that into it. So, a lot of times I work with people, not just with couples or parenting or women's issues or men's issues. I also work from an executive functioning. So I am a psychologist. I'm also a life coach, executive coach, hypnotherapist. When you go through it, you start learning and expanding what I do. So everything I've done, it's also with an intention in mind. But with executive coaching, a lot of these things can apply even within business. When you're gaining trust with your employees, when you're gaining trust with your boss, these are all things. Like, for instance, those things I said in the beginning, if you're in a workplace, you don't want to be caught doing anything that can emotionally hurt your employees or your boss. You don't want to get caught talking about other people at work. It may come back to you. There's a lot of different things. Stability. You don't want to be this productive person one day. You come in, no production the next day. That starts breaking down trust. So you can see a lot of these things apply to what goes on. Also the same thing within our world. If you're a person that, goes to Trader Joe's, I'm one of those people that go to Trader Joe's, love to get in there, get all my stuff done as soon as I can, but everybody there is so friendly. Sometimes they bring up a conversation, they'll ask a question, whatever it is. If I'm nasty one day, kind the next, nasty the next time, it will get to the point where they'll see me and say, okay, don't talk to that one. You never know what you're going to get. See, it's in our world, in our community. There needs to be consistency and stability. So all of these things, those areas that I talked about in the beginning, Don't want to physically harm, emotionally harm, stability, cheating, talking behind your back. All of those things can apply. So start thinking about in your life how you can become more trustworthy. And what do you need to do in your life to accept more trustworthy people? Because I will tell you this, sometimes we allow people to keep hurting us over and over and over again. We keep giving them second, third, fourth, fifth chances. Sometimes, people walk away from you. You're feeling lonely, you're struggling, and it's been a relationship that lacked trust. And sometimes, I hate to say this, those snakes get out of your life to shed their skin and come back as a bigger snake. You got to be careful. Choose who you want in your life wisely. You're going to have people in your life that, out of obligation, sometimes family, you could still set boundaries, and we will talk about that in another episode. You're going to be in a work situation where you feel you can't trust somebody. Okay, have your eyes open. But be careful with your hearts. Be careful with your mind. Don't offer yourself to people, okay, that look at you as an option when you're giving them a value spot. And I'm going to say that in the reverse way. Don't give people a value spot who only look at you as an option. Protect your heart. Know about how to be trustworthy. Know how to expect someone to be a trustworthy person in your life. Here's my other thing. Start today. Start looking at how you can change your life today. One thing you could do, sit back, look at your friends, pen to paper, not on your phone, pen to paper. Your brain reacts a different way. Write out maybe friends list, a list of friends. Okay, these are people that I know have my heart 100%. These people are more of an acquaintance. Look at what you write. Maybe there's something there. Don't allow yourself to be put out there to be hurt. Trust the people who are trustworthy and have earned that trust. Be careful of the other ones. That doesn't mean you have to throw them out, kick them to the curb. I'm just saying, put them in a category. Life is hard. We have bills. We have issues. You have families, problems in your home. You have where you can settle certain things, do it. Do it. Choose to bring happiness into your life. Now, one last thing. My website, chatwithdrkat.com. If you have any further questions, thoughts, reactions, let me know. It can be anonymous. Put in your email address or name. Either way, doesn't make a difference. Just remember, be good to yourself. Choose things wisely in your life. Be a good person in your home, within your friends, within the community, and within our world. This is Dr. Kat. Have a great day.